A federal judge denies the team's injunction request, and NASCAR says the playoffs are here to stay. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. On the go, coming to you from Phoenix Raceway. It's a cool, crisp, sunny morning here in the desert. A lot of news yesterday I didn't get a chance to cover. It was a hellacious travel day for me. But here this morning, ahead of the Xfinity Series finale, I figured we'd catch up on all the latest headlines. First and foremost, the big news yesterday, a federal judge has denied 2311 and Front Row's injunction request. The judge ruled, at this time, plaintiffs have not met their burden as required for a preliminary injunction. Should circumstances change, plaintiffs may file a renewed motion for preliminary injunction. Therefore, the court denies plaintiffs' motion without prejudice. However, the court intends to assign this case to the fast track as defined in this court's standing orders. 2311 and Front Row released this statement yesterday in response to the judge's ruling. They said, "We are pleased with the court's decision to expedite discovery and fast-track the schedule in our case against NASCAR. Although we are disappointed that the preliminary injunction was denied, which we intend to appeal, this denial has no bearing on the merits of our case. My clients will move forward to race in 2025 and continue to fight for a more fair and equitable system in NASCAR that complies with antitrust law." So, yes, the judge does note that this case will be fast-tracked. As y'all know, I'm not a legal expert. I don't exactly know what that means. 2311 and Front Row appear to be celebrating that. If this does get to the discovery stage, that will put a lot of pressure on NASCAR, who has been very reluctant to open up their books, show their financial records, make information public. If it gets to that point, then that would put a lot of pressure on NASCAR. But this ruling yesterday undoubtedly puts immediate pressure on 2311 and Front Row. The teams will appeal, but assuming the call on the field stands, their injunction request has been denied, the teams will not be able to race as chartered entries in 2025. They will be forced to race as open entries, which means they'll receive less purse money. They won't be locked into the field, which could come into play in races like the Daytona 500. 2311 has said that because of their contracts with drivers and sponsors could pull out as a result of this ruling. Tyler Reddick, they say, could leave because his contract states he is going to run with a charter. I don't expect Tyler Reddick to walk away this offseason, but who knows? Sponsors absolutely could, especially if they miss an important race early in the season. But more directly now, if these teams want to race next year, even as open teams, they have to agree to NASCAR's terms. And one of NASCAR's terms says in so many words, you can't sue us on antitrust grounds. So again, I'm no legal expert, but I am a bit surprised this injunction wasn't granted, or at least that part of the injunction wasn't granted. Because, as I and many others understand it, if the teams sign off to race next year, they are potentially waiving their rights to sue NASCAR. That could jeopardize this entire case. Maybe it won't. Maybe there's a way this case would get grandfathered in. I'm obviously no legal expert. All I know after yesterday is that this was a big win for NASCAR. It does put immediate pressure on 2311 and Front Row. The fast tracking of this case could end up putting pressure on NASCAR, again, if this gets to the discovery stage and they're forced to show their records. But if I were to assign a winner in this battle, I think it has to be NASCAR. Not a blowout victory by any means, but a small victory in what could be a large-scale stock car racing world war, honestly. But that's the latest from the lawsuit. Hearing was on Monday, decision made Friday afternoon. At the same time, this judge made his decision. Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell of NASCAR were giving their annual State of the Sport address here in Phoenix. They covered a lot of ground. Some parts they used a lot of words to say a lot of nothing, and other parts I actually think they tackled some interesting subjects. Of course, it has been a tumultuous week for NASCAR. Last weekend's race at Martinsville featured controversy Friday, Saturday, Sunday night, officiating called into question Sunday, penalties issued Tuesday, appeals heard Thursday. All of this ahead of championship weekend with a lawsuit hanging over their heads. One of the first topics the Steves addressed was the playoffs, and they said quite simply, the playoffs are here to stay.
The format is the format, right? And we are always looking, if there are opportunities for us to tweak something, so be it. There was a huge emphasis put 10 years ago when the format was put into place about winning, right? The 3 of the 4 on Sunday, they won. to get through. So if we are all going to be honest and say, hey, how's the racing been during the playoffs in these 9 weeks? I don't think it's been ever better.
The format is one thing, right? But playoffs, I think we're not going to go away from playoffs. We'll absolutely look at, what form the playoffs take in the off season. You always learn, like I said before, but playoffs in and of itself, as Steve said, you cannot argue with the quality of racing that the playoffs have delivered. You can talk about the format if we do some different things, but absolutely we're going to stick with it.
For decades, NASCAR rewarded the championship based on who was the most consistent all year. The format rewarded survival, conservatism. The current format does still reward some consistency, but there's an added emphasis on risk-taking and late season heroics. I'll say it again. What Joey Logano did saving fuel at Las Vegas was incredible. I don't think any other driver in Cup could have accomplished that. What Tyler Reddick did at Homestead 2 weeks ago was equally heroic. We've never seen someone pass two drivers like that on the final lap to win at Miami. And what Ryan Blaney did at Martinsville, from 10th to 1st in the final 87 laps with a car that's notoriously difficult to pass with, that was equally heroic. Those are the kinds of moments this format creates. This format rewards bold moves, risky gambles. I'm not here to say that the Winston Cup era or the playoff era is better. I'm just pointing out they're different. I did find Steve Phelps's quote interesting, though, that there could be tweaks to the format. The 10-race playoff, here to stay likely for many years to come, but could the format within those 10 races see some adjustments? I wouldn't mind seeing a few things change. Y'all know I don't love winning you're in the regular season, or at least limit it to like the top 25 in points are able to win their way in. I don't want to see 35th winning at Daytona and clinching a spot. I'm sorry. Maybe we can work in a little more of an advantage for drivers who do well in the regular season points. I'm glad to hear that NASCAR is open to making some tweaks. I do like the current format, but as I've said this week, it's not perfect. I'm glad to hear NASCAR is still open to making some, at least small adjustments. Another moment from yesterday's press conference that got a lot of attention on social media was when Steve O'Donnell discussed the officiating. A lot of fans, I noticed, only reacted to the "we don't have an officiating problem" quote and ran with that, ignored the other context.
One of the biggest things you want to do is how do we continue to use technology in real time to notice what may or may not be occurring on the track, address that as soon as possible, but I don't believe we have an officiating issue at all. I think we have the best and the brightest in the business. Yes, we make mistakes. They're humans. Hopefully we'll never get to just AI making calls. But we will make adjustments. And I think if me or John or Elton or Steve are not up talking before the Daytona 500 about adjustments that we've made, then we haven't done our job.
I disagree with O'Donnell. I do believe there is an officiating problem. He mentions how there are controversial calls in other sports. That's true. Other sports make officiating mistakes too, but the NASCAR officiating feels like it's gotten worse. They're slower to make the calls they're supposed to make. Maybe it's because we have the playoffs now and every late season race and position and restart is scrutinized that much more, but it sure feels like they miss more calls or let certain calls go. We have more questions now about the officiating than I think we did 10 years ago. That's just me speaking as a longtime fan. I am glad to hear O'Donnell mention technology. There are ways we can be better in real time. Yeah, I'm a big baseball fan. I'm not a big fan of the automated strike zone. I know a lot of baseball fans are. Maybe I'm a purist in that respect. I like that there's still that human element. The catcher can frame. Like, that's a skill. There's a game within a game there. Like, I do want there to be humans making these calls because sometimes calls fall within a gray area and NASCAR needs to be able to read the situation to make the most fair call. But using technology to identify problems quicker, absolutely. Like, if there's a way that AI could have spotted Kyle Busch's tire falling off before the restart at Martinsville last week and thrown the yellow automatically, that would have been good. Instead of having to wait many seconds for the tower to relay with their officials and figure out what was going on, and then, oh, we have a restart, but we don't have a restart. Like, that's a perfect example of using technology, more cameras, more sensors, I don't know, just more technology to get an important black and white call right. So that's my reaction. Steve O'Donnell also said he was pissed off by how last week's Martinsville race played out with all the blatant race manipulation.
What I saw in Martinsville pissed me off, and it pissed everyone off at NASCAR. We had a call with our OEMs where we were very clear in what our intentions are going forward. Will we have a rule next year? 1,000%. And they're aware of that, and they're aware if anything happens this weekend, which it won't, but we will react. We're not going to let people, drivers, teams, anyone, OEMs, challenge the integrity of the sport.
Strong words there from Steve O'Donnell. NASCAR is hell-bent on stamping out any sort of late-season race manipulation. The only way I think they have a chance of winning that war is by penalizing the OEMs directly. That's Ford, Chevy, Toyota. Like I said this week, though, it's tough. You can write the rule all you want. Will they enforce the rule when push comes to shove? Because Ford, Chevy, and Toyota are some of the sport's most key, crucial partners. TV, manufacturers, I mean, they are the reason the sport is still as big as it is today. How far are you willing to go if they break the rules? Talk is one thing. They're saying all the right things, but when push comes to shove, will their actions back up their words? I'm skeptical. Couple more quick details I want to touch on. They did mention that Xfinity is back. It will still be the Xfinity series, at least for next year. There have been some questions about that. They also mentioned a fourth manufacturer. Are they close? Steve Phelps said he is cautiously optimistic. They've been talking to a potential fourth manufacturer, but he also said that any new manufacturer is still a few years away from actually being on track racing. It will be a long, slow process. So remember at the beginning of this year, there were some very real rumors and reports about Honda being interested in stock car racing. Haven't heard much from that since. I think Hyundai even came up at one point over the summer, so your guess is as good as mine. NASCAR said the ideal number of manufacturers in the sport would be 5. Long way to go to get there, but they sound encouraged, but they've also been saying that for 2, 3, 4. When did Dodge leave? They've basically been saying that ever since Dodge left. That was what, 2012? After 2012? Into 2013? It's over a decade now. They've been cautiously optimistic about adding a fourth manufacturer. It's been a while. I'll believe it when I see it, but anyway, that's it. Those are my reactions to the biggest headlines, the most notable quotes, notable moments from yesterday's State of the Sport address. Anything jump out to you? Did I add any additional context that maybe changes your opinion here today? Let me know. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Gosh, that sun is bright. Want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters. It's thanks to you all that I'm able to come to the races like this, cover these things on site. If you missed my Truck Series post-race recap from yesterday, you can check that out. I'll be covering the Xfinity race, obviously the Cup race tomorrow. Busy weekend ahead. I just want to say I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, folks. I will talk to you again soon.